Welcome to the arena. My name is Greg Sindelar, and today I have a very special guest, Senator Paul Bettencourt, or as I affectionately call him, and I think most people do, Uncle Paul. Welcome to the show.
Yes, I have an ever-growing legion of nephews and nieces in public policy.
There we go. That's right. Well, and I feel this is weird because you're a radio guy. You got the Three Amigos, and
about 20 years now on Fridays.
Yeah, and here I'm just one amigo. Yeah. So, but
well, we're just podcasting away. You're the wave of the future.
Yeah,
okay?
that's right.
We're still punching AM dials down in H-Town.
Well, I hope I can do as much for you as Joe Rogan did for the president. So we'll see. We'll see what we can do.
That was huge. It was great. Joe's a really good friend of mine. Did I tell you Lieutenant Governor Patrick's a great guy too? We're just going to be doing lots of Doge here as well.
It's going to be great. This is going to be so fun. All right. Well, Senator, the whole purpose of this is get to know you a little bit better, understand your story, and then dive a little bit into the policy. There's obviously a lot of great things that have already happened in the Texas Senate, and I think will happen over the next couple months in the Texas Senate. But let's go back, not back too far because you're not that old, but back to how you got into politics and policy. You have a really interesting story. I've heard you tell it a few times, but can you share with our audience, what got you started? You started this conservative club in your high school and all these other things with Steve Munisteri, right? If I remember correctly. Tell us a little bit about that and how you did that. You went to A&M and all these other fun things. I want you to dive into
these
that
fun
story.
Things, right? Yeah. Like, should we show our Aggie rings to the audience?
Yeah.
Well, I actually found out today that I'm, I was born the same year Rafael Cruz left Cuba. Okay, because we had that testimony today. So, and more, importantly for me, my formative years, I'm a shell brat. So the Army brats and the carbide brats and the petrochem people and refinery people understand that. In the 60s, we moved around as plants were being built. And
One of my cousins was an Exxon brat.
See, that's it. Yeah. And that was the big period of expansion in American petrochemical industry. So it was literally going from building a refinery to a polypropylene unit, et cetera. My dad ended up being vice president of engineering at Shell, and then they moved everybody to Houston. Mm-hmm. And that was really a great experience, was because I was born in Deer Park and came back and didn't realize how much I'd missed the place until I got home. And Munisteri and I, who I think is, certainly by any expectation, was probably the greatest Republican Party chairman this century, is someone that has been a long-term associate of mine. We really started out in what was then junior high. I know I'm dating myself at this point. There was a junior high, then a senior high. So before we
so junior high, 8th grade or 9th grade?
That was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Okay.
And Steve.
Now we just call that middle school.
Right. And Steve and I met there, and we were active on student council. He was more active in debate than I was at the time. And then we went to Memorial High School together. And I can remember as a freshman, we ended up debating McGovernites in 1972, because that was the first eruption of socialism that we saw. And Steve would, basically have to, bring on his tag team partner, Uncle Paul. And we would actually have debates out in the halls and wherever else because...
Was he the good cop and you were the bad cop?
Well, at the time, I was a bigger cop. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that's right. And the valedictorian was actually one of the socialists. So it was quite a fight. Steve, of course, went on to a great career. He founded Young Conservatives of Texas at UT. I went to a really good school.
Yeah, you went to a much better school.
Right.
That's right.
And became active there in student government, vice president, judicial board chairman, residence hall, a head resident, actually, of the largest men's dorm back then, off-campus Aggies president, you name it, every job but student body president, because I could get paid as a resident advisor and have my own room, but I couldn't do it and they wouldn't let me do it and be a student body president too.
Oh, interesting.
That's where the Uncle Paul moniker came, because it was actually Representative Alder's mother and father and that generation of kids back at A&M that started calling me Uncle Paul. Actually, Brad Smith was a student body president who coined the phrase.
Oh, really?
And so that...
I never knew the genesis of that.
No, so that's where that followed me to the Republican Party in Houston, even though they were calling me an uncle at the grand old age of 20s. But when you're the judicial board chairman, I guess you look like everybody's uncle.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that's wonderful. I never knew the origin of that story. So now I have a little bit of history, and next time I see Representative Alders, I have to talk to him about that. But tell us a little bit. So you graduate from A&M, you go back to Houston, and you get really involved in property taxes and all that. Well, the good news is
I was actually cash flow positive before I did that. Okay, my first job was in robotics. Okay, and I actually worked for the first U.S. robot manufacturer named Unimation. I went in then from there to process control. That's the shell brat coming out for about 10 years for a company called what was Combustion Engineering. You got bought by ABB, and then I was offered a transfer to Cleveland, Ohio, which I knew was going to be a disaster. And my wife didn't want to move either.
No offense to Cleveland.
No. At the time, this is like the 1990s. It's improved somewhat.
Yeah.
And so we stayed at home, and I started doing some consulting, and I was then the treasurer of the local party. Started out being a Harris County Republican Party precinct chair, got moved up to vice chairman, and then the gentleman who had been in office as the tax assessor for 51 years and an odd number of months and days finally died. His name was Carl Smith, and he had gone to work in the tax office when Roosevelt was president, not Teddy. And the place was in desperate need of modernization. And so some very good friends, that aren't with us anymore, but from the Christian Coalition and as well as the at the time, the VP of the party called and said, "I've got 100 votes if you'll run to be the replacement tax assessor." And my wife and I were driving to a family reunion in Galveston Island because my dad was born on the island, so we haven't had that. And she goes, "Well, it's better than moving to Cleveland." So that's how I ran for tax assessor collector. Won the first race, 98. Won again in 2000. Set the high vote total for a Republican in Harris County at well over 600,000 votes.
Yeah. And
I'm hoping that our next round of Republicans will do better than Uncle Paul did back then.
Well, it's still big shoes to fill. So you've been known as kind of like the tax guy, the property tax guy in particular. That was like one of your issues when you and Lieutenant Governor were kind of coming up here and beating the drum on property taxes even before you came to office. Can you tell us a little bit about those times and a little bit about what it's been like to actually then be in the Senate and working on these issues?
Well, a lot of times Lieutenant Governor Patrick and I have wondered what the odds would be that a tax assessor collector and a radio owner were running two buses of disgruntled taxpayers up to the legislature in 2003, and people drove in. We had several hundred people there at hearings, and we were just horribly mistreated by unfortunately, a Republican chair at the time, and that so galvanized us that we wouldn't give up. Okay, and Lieutenant Governor Patrick started as senator, and when he moved up to run for lieutenant governor, he gave me about 24 hours and said, "Look, you'd be great for this job, but you have to make a decision." As my political consultant would tell me, I've been loath to make a decision about running for higher office because I turned down running for Congress many times. But it turned out to be the right time and place because I had a business by that point and could also understand that these are really citizen legislative positions, and it's a fabulous job. I think it's a unique job in the country. I think we have the best group of conservative legislators in the country, and there's some pretty good competition at the American Legislative Exchange Council between states like Wyoming and Utah and Georgia, pick a Sun Belt state, but this group has really come together to pass some substantial public policy, and one of the summary of this is it was millions to one that the guys that were doing the bus trip are the guys that could be 20 years later, almost to the day, to be the people that passed what was a record property tax cut.
Yep.
Because when we passed it, we thought it was only going to cost us $18 billion, but by the time we got back here, they scored it to 22.7.
Yep.
So President Trump did actually endorse the plan, and I know it's a world record because he said it was, and Lieutenant Governor Patrick said it was. So that 22.7 billion is a world record, and that's going to be lasting property tax relief.
Yeah, for sure. And as a homeowner, property taxpayer, thank you.
You can say thank you, Uncle Paul, but no, I don't want to run.
I'm not going to be like Zelensky. I'm going to tell you thank you.
That's right.
But I think the problem is, right, I live here in Austin, Texas, in Travis County, and the locals eat up a lot of it, right? And you see all kinds of things that they do, whether it's from the ballot language where you don't really understand what you're voting for, they take any of the relief the state is sending and they eat into it, so you don't see as much relief as you would.
Yeah, Austin ISD should be ashamed of themselves because they basically pitched a plan that was so horrible that the public didn't understand it. They voted 58% for it, but 10 former trustees told them not to do it because they dramatically increased rates as the maximum they could in the teeth of Robin Hood, knowing that the state was going to benefit on 73% of every dollar that was raised, and they were only getting 27. Yeah. It was a really bad public policy move, and it really jacked up people's, ISD tax payments up here. Now, we had prepared for this for a long time because in 2019, probably the most single important bill passed, even though we had the record bill 5 years later, was SB 2, because for the first time in 38 years, we lowered the growth of government. That's a really important concept because if you slow the growth of government, that's the only way to slow tax bills, regardless of what tax you've got, income tax, sales tax, property tax. So we lowered those rollback rates. Then we had to get through all sorts of disaster exemption problems because of COVID and all that. We finally pop out there. We start lowering the tax rates through HB 3 and then up the homestead exemptions. So then we blast out with this really good plan. Now, I'll give you some stats. If we hadn't have made those changes, then you would see that special districts are up like 22% over the last few years, but cities and counties only 10%. And the difference is the rollback rate for cities and counties above 30,000 in population is 3.5%.
Yeah.
Schools have a hard rate of 2.5. But anytime Austin ISD does this, or my really favorite is Harris County government, who raised the taxes 15% by rate because the value only went up 0.3%.
Yep.
And so we're in a situation now where taxing jurisdictions no longer have any shame. They just go and maximum smash their taxpayers.
Yep.
So we've got holes being plugged on all these issues, that we observe, because as we continue to do more with, at least on the Senate bill, more on homestead exemption increase, but the Senate also has compression because if we continue more on property tax relief, you have to stop people from effectively raiding taxpayers' pocketbooks.
Yeah, and you used to bring busloads of people here. What is it that we need to do to get busloads of people to, the school boards and the county commissioners court and all these things where a lot of this raiding is happening and they don't realize it?
Well, the problem is that it's happening even in conservative counties. Montgomery County used their increment rates, which is left over from that bill, and they raised their taxes by nearly 10% without a public vote. This one in Harris County was so bad because the county judge, who's Lena Hidalgo, was saying it was only 8% increase, but that was the disaster rollback rate, knowing that it really wasn't the 15% increase that she was trying to get the public to authorize. She barely won that election 51-49. If she had told the public it wasn't an 8% increase in advance, it was going to be a 15, it would have gone down. In fact, about only 30 to 35% of these voter-approved tax rate elections passed. So the public is taking a dim view of these increases. In fact, we had a great hearing in the fall where a guy defeated one issue by dressing up as a dinosaur before a football game and said, if you vote for this this bond issue, you'll be extinct by the time you pay off the bonds. And he won. It was really a brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
So you can break through a lot of this with voters, but I don't blame the voters, because if they're not informed, they are being misled. So one of the things I'm doing, no matter what, is we're going to up the requirements for a tax rate increase. Right now, it's a 60%. You have to have 60% of your taxing jurisdiction to increase taxes. So why not 75?
Yeah.
Because the onus is really on the elected officials. Now, there are people that have taken the bill. Lubbock County is one where the sheriff said, we've got to do stuff to the jail. They took that to the voters. The voters approved it, and the project was a success. But they didn't lie about it when they did it.
Yep, that's right.
And that's what really aggravates me. Okay, that really makes me mad when I saw that. So we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And and these taxes, right? It's one of the many reasons people feel that it's unaffordable to buy a house. And I know another one of the issues you're working on is housing affordability and making sure that young people can afford their houses. People who have houses can afford to stay in them.
Right. Now, you've seen your tax bill.
Yep.
Now, it's not just even the 2019 SB2 or the HB3 or the big bill SB2 and 20. We've passed a whole bunch of things. One of them is first-time home buyers. If you were a first-time home buyer, you didn't get your pro rata portion of a homestead exemption.
Yep, that's right.
And what you could walk into is if you bought from somebody, an old guy like me, with a low tax bill, you get smashed by the time you paid the bill. And it was basically what I called a over 65 snapback shot. Because if you bought from somebody, that was what buyers used to have. We fixed that problem.
Yep.
Okay. By raising the homestead exemptions, we fixed that problem for 5.7 million homeowners. But I think one of the things I'm really the most proud of is back when we started this, the best that over 65s could do is your taxes wouldn't go up. So we broke the causality that said you've got to freeze. And every year, as you get more exemption or your rates go up, and your freeze value goes down, your value goes down. And the silver-haired legislature testified that the vast majority of people now can be at nearly a zero tax bill if you're over 65. In fact, about 49% of the school districts report that their average value is less than $140,000 exemption. So that means half the people won't pay any taxes at all.
Yeah.
Now, what this means is that we're targeting people that really need help. And this affordability problem is a problem.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, the average age of the home buyer is now 54.
Yeah, I saw that, which shocked me.
It shocked me because just 15 years ago it was like, well, let's say you were in your 30s, okay? Yeah, whatever.
15 years ago, I was in my 20s.
Right. Okay, so anyway, but that's gone from the 30s all the way up to 54. Yeah. Now, look, I can't wait till this goes to 64 because that's going to be unsustainable.
Yep.
So we're looking at green space land. We're looking at trying to use minimum lot sizes. We're trying to use incentives to help homeowners build 4,000-foot lots or less. We've got, other bills coming along that we're going to try to take some of these commercial properties and cut like a hot knife through butter on these regulations on zoning so they could try to convert to residential. We're looking at charitable groups doing, condos, duplexes, whatever else. Because because we need better dwelling acre per unit numbers in the cities where the jobs are.
Yep.
And because we do have a lot of space, but of course it's in rural Texas, way outside the employment centers.
Yep.
So that's SB 15. And that's another priority bill. And by the way, it's the same thing. The reason why the Senate's been so hard on getting a higher homestead exemption, because it helps with affordability. Okay. I mean, that for you was probably a $1,300 reduction. I can't remember. Maybe it was $1,100.
I think it was actually closer to $1,400.
Okay, $1,400. All right. So that $1,400 exemption for you lets you stay in your home, and it lowered, and that's after tax, federal income tax, because it's direct transfer to you, and you get to keep that money. Now, the home builders say that the crisis is so large now that every $1,000 added on to the price of a home is rapidly deteriorating what's already bad, which is 73% of the people don't think they can afford a median home.
Yep.
But every $1,000 on that median price starts knocking off more people off that list. So this is one of my big crusades for this time, because all of this all rolls together, property tax reduction, homestead exemption increases, and housing affordability or home affordability.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big challenges. And it came home to roost to me. I checked my starter home. See, the one thing is everybody knows, I'm looking at the camera, you know what you paid for your first home, okay? And
I'm still in my first home.
Right.
And I live in Austin. It's gone up so much, I probably will never leave.
Well, and now, see, and we're trying to make sure you do, because the home builders would love for you to leave, and so would the realtors, because we want you to move up, okay, to whatever.
I've almost got it paid off, and so.
Right, that's right. Well, I mean, so, yeah, there's always good strategies. Like, look at a 15-year mortgage, maybe not a 30, if you can afford it, but whatever.
Absolutely.
So when you look at all of this, that you have to make sure people have the options. And my home, which was about $139,000, now lists in Houston for $492,000. My son and his new bride are out looking, and the first home they saw, guess what the first starter home was?
Price $692,000.
$492,000. And then they looked at a $600,000 home. So the problem is that because of inflation, especially all this leftover Biden administration, horrible public policies baked all this stuff in, that no one's building starter homes less than $350,000 now. In fact, I asked is anybody building starter homes less than $300,000? And not a single builder rep, the associations, anybody raised their hand and said, yeah, we're doing it. Yeah. So that's why things like looking for accessory dwelling units, okay, which AKA, granny flats, whatever. All these things we're looking at is really important. We've got to increase supply. Look, I hate to say this because I know there's some leftist and progressive socialists out there that disagree, but there is supply and demand. And if you increase supply, you might actually get prices to lower, or certainly they'll become more affordable over time. And so we're trying to increase supply any way we can, trying to get government out of the way, because there's so many interlocking, issues, apply for zoning, variances, whatever. Just cut it like a hot knife through butter. Okay. And that's what we really need to be doing. Yeah.
Well, and it's so acute all over the state. It wasn't that long ago that we touted how affordable our state is, and so many people moved here, right?
No, of course, right.
Yeah, that now the supply is so limited.
Well, we went through COVID, which, was a major shock change, because it also changed the fact that people value homes more than they value. You see, that was a question of, where's the money going, to where you work or where you live.
Yep, that's right.
And people chose to put the money in where they live. So, but of course, apartments also exploded at the time. So it wasn't just, effectively, it was where where you slept, where you put your head down. And so we saw those valuation changes. So that's why the good news, I think everybody realizes it's an issue. We're going to make some progress on it this time, no doubt about it. We've got a great pill package coming out, and Lieutenant Governor Patrick's made it one of the top 20 priorities.
Yeah, and y'all have been a leader on that, and it'll take time, right? Like we'll probably take a few sessions to continue to address it, because one of the things that people still have, right, is we can build all the townhomes we want, but people, the American dream is a single family, white picket fence.
No, I was saying that I was about ready to say,
Yeah.
right? And you can get there, okay? And the question is, how do we help you get there?
Yep, that's right.
And after going through the process myself, okay, that's why that's why even though there's a big controversy about it, you've covered it here about whether we should have a homestead exemption or not. Well, by God, the Senate stuck together to get one, because it's just so important to lower the load on families. So many good things happen when you have home ownership.
Yep.
You get, you have a better family life. You have better education results. You have better health. You have all sorts of things happen when people have a home.
Yeah, there's safety and comfort in that. It's good for kids. Yeah.
But right now, it's cheaper to rent in many places than it is to own.
Yep.
So we've got other bills about squatters, and I'm on a lot of legislation at this point in time.
You are. You're a busy guy.
And then we got voter integrity, about ready to crank all that up again.
Yeah. Well, that's never a finished job, especially in Harris County.
No, that's right.
We could spend a whole nother half hour on that.
Half hour, but we made tremendous progress. And by the way, this is a Republican kind of saying that the county clerk who we entrusted in elections, she happens to be a Democrat, named Tanisha Hudspeth, has done a very good job of trying to pull that together from what was a failed, by any measurement, elections administrative office, period, end of statement.
Yep.
So, look, we'll look for bipartisan solutions, but if we have to, partisan solutions are available, and now everybody loves that solution.
Yeah.
Okay. In the rearview mirror, I probably have more votes for that now than I did actually on the floor.
It's funny. It's funny how that works out.
Success is great. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
success has 1,000 fathers, right? So, yeah, that's right.
And in this case, mothers.
And mothers. That's right. That's right. Well, and I think, we don't. Election integrity, secure elections, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. Everyone should have should want that, right? We want to know who won. It's such an important institution. It's a bedrock of kind of our republic, right? Yeah.
No, of course. Look, I'm going to wrap this back up by when I was tax assessor. Okay, I talked about wanting to have government efficiency. I didn't call it Doge back then, but we did a lot of audits. We did a lot of things to improve government efficiency. The Harris County Tax Office was a model of it, because we kept our budget flat for almost 9 years, and took on 70% more work in some cases. So I've always been about government efficiency, and I've also been about voter integrity, because you have to have a voter roll with integrity. If you have voter roll integrity, people believe the results.
Yep, that's right.
And then I've always been looking for ways to reduce the cost of government for taxpayers. So I find myself wondering now if I'm, when I thought I was operating government, like some of the Doge people, I was thinking, hey, that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to be able to operate and cut costs. And then, as I, now in this part of the career, I'm trying to figure out ways to make sure we institutionalize them, put those best practices into law, have top-down guidelines so that local taxing jurisdictions don't eat chat of house and home as the state is, cutting taxes. And so I find myself doing the same three things, but with a fantastic staff and a great group of colleagues. We've been able to accomplish a lot, and I'm really enjoying to get all these bills out. We could talk about education, special education. I've got virtual education. I've got tons of these what I call second tier bills that are going to make a big difference in people's lives too. And I just wish we would have passed them a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Because they would have already made positive impacts. But to quote Scarlett O'Hara, tomorrow's another day.
That's right.
The Senate will get up and we'll pass more bills tomorrow.
That's right. We always expect that of y'all, and especially of you. All right, very last question as we wrap. The hardest question I'm going to ask you.
Wow, should I get ready?
Yeah, you should get ready. We're going to duke it out. No, I think we probably agree on this. When people are in your district, where should they eat?
Well, I have so many friends and they're so great. I love them all. Okay. But you can find me in a series of very good restaurants. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention my good friend Ed Hendy of
I was going to say
Texas.
Taste of Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Kind of one of the anchors.
Nine and Ed, right?
I've got so many good ones. I could just rip them all off. Of course, as somebody that could, slim down a little doge myself, I have many friends in the restaurant business, but maybe one too many. But they're all great people.
That's right. That's right. Well, yeah, Taste of Texas is wonderful, and Ed and Nina are wonderful people. Well, Senator Bettencourt, Uncle Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everything you've done and been doing. I am truly grateful for the property tax relief, and I'm looking forward to more of that.
Was a Ronald Reagan Award winner from TPPF from your predecessor. Okay, all right.
But I'm the one who convinced him to do that.
Oh, you were the one that convinced him? Great. Now he's running Heritage, so you guys or whatever.
Yeah, he's not important.
Like, no, I forget him. Forget Kevin.
I love Kevin.
Well, look, like many of us, that was my generation I grew up with. You've got a whole group of people that are growing up in the Trumpsters generation now. But this Doge thing is very important.
That's
because
right.
Reagan was very much against the growth of government back then. And that's the same thing that again, we're having this fight now.
Yep.
And you just can't lose it to leftist progressive socialists, because if you do, and if you notice, I'm even talking about this in a partisan standpoint, because the amount of waste in the federal level is astonishingly bad. But that's something that's always going to be bedrock principle of Uncle Paul, TPPF.
Yep.
Okay, is controlling that growth of government long term.
Yep.
Because in the 21st century, you can control growth of government, have customer service, you can do it all.
That's right.
But you just have to decide that the taxpayers and AKA the customers come first.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we have to know is government's there to serve, not the other way around.
Right.
That's
because
right.
and Reagan's got great quotes on that. And I think right now the Trumpster and the whole team is proving it up in Washington D.C. And I would love, in fact, we talked about today at the Education Committee. I'm just so happy that we're going to get a block grant instead of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
My superintendent from the third largest school system said that he has never met a Department of Education member in 30 years. And I said, you don't have to. If we're lucky, we'll just get the money, and then everybody will be happy with the result.
Yeah, just get the check to you. You'll figure it out.
All right. Live long and prosper.
Yeah. Thank you, Uncle Paul.
That's right.
Thank you all for joining us on The Arena. We'll see you on the next episode.